Alright guys, I am the owner of a 2002 Volvo V70 T5, and most recently I went to auction and I picked up another V70 for a pretty good price. I thought it was doing well, but after I started to get into the gas, it had some serious shifting issues. It was a little rough going into second gear, and it was a little rough downshifting to first. It also did some second to third gear flares. So I did a little research, and the problem with these Volvos is this AW5550SN transmission the manufacturer says that it's a lifetime fluid. Everybody on the Volvo sites, nope. So I put in some Seafoam trans tune and drove it around, and immediately the rough shifting from second gear started to minimize. Now I drove it for 25 miles and then I drained the sump. The sump on these holds 3.3 quarts. So if you want to reduce any headaches and you have an 01 to 04 Volvo, and you're having some of these issues, some of the more serious issues, this is an option. This is the first attempt instead of going to a transmission shop. You know, what happens is there are some valves in there, and there are solenoids that build up gunk or sediment over 100,000 miles of never having the transmission fluid changed. And if you can break that stuff free, you're going to save on all the labor. So it works. Again, after I did the first drain of 3.3 quarts, I ran it. The second to third gear flare started to minimize. The downshift to first started to minimize, but was still a little harsh. Then I drove that for about 25 miles. I dumped the sump again at another 3.3 quarts and did a refill, and drove it tonight, and it is way better. I mean, you're talking red tranny fluid that is completely brown because ASIN decided to tell everybody this is a lifetime transmission. Well, bullshit, you know. So if you're having any transmission issues, before going and doing a software update, if you're having rough downshifts to first while you're coming up to a stop, you're going to see that transmission wants to downshift into first at right about 17 miles an hour, and you're going to get a little clunk. And then you're having, a rough shift up into second, and second and third gear flares. That second and third gear flare is from the valve body that's on the side of the trans. But if as long as that's not scarred and it's just some of that old crap in there, run a trans tune through it and start doing a full flush. Run it around for 25 miles, dump it, put some new trans fluid in it, run it around for another 25 miles, dump it, repeat the process, and you might save yourself a lot of money. I also found that AutoZone and O'Reilly's carry what's called, if you want to go with Castrol, it's Transmax Import. Meets all the conditions of JWS 3309. That's the fluid this thing calls for, and it is freaking expensive. Mazda T4, Toyota T4 is the same thing. It's JWS 3309. Mobile manufactures it, and they relabel it for all these different companies. And Volvo sells this for an astronomical price. If you go buy Valvoline Max Life ATF, it meets all the standards for JWS 3309. So that's what I've done. The other thing is reaching that dipstick is a little bit tough, and there are some hot parts in the motor. So in these transmissions, if you overfill them or underfill them, they will not shift happy. So if you're going to do, you can either test it hot or cold. So if you say you do this job cold and you go to do your refill, dump your sump, your drain plug, then fill it back up with 3.3 quarts, and you should be good to go if you have this transmission. It really comes in at 3.3. The sump holds 3.3. Now, when you go to check the dipstick and the car's not running, it's going to be over full. But the minute you get that car running, that dipstick's going to be perfect if you just stick with draining the sump and filling it back up with 3.3 quarts. So I just really wanted to give this advice because I am absolutely amazed. This transmission that I got from this auction car shifted rough, and then when I really got into it, it started doing second to third gear flares, and for it to be almost shifting perfect now, and I've only done two drains on it and the one treatment, I am just absolutely amazed. And I know Volvo online has a super bad rap for this bad transmission. Well, I'm telling you, the reason it goes bad at 100,000+ miles is because those solenoids and valves get gunked up. So I hope this helps. Remember to, I wouldn't do, there is another method where you can pump it out the return line from the radiator, but I don't know if I would do that personally, because if you run the sump dry, you're putting trouble on the transmission pump. But yeah, if you're gonna do a transmission flush, go get yourself 3 gallons of this Valvoline Max Life or 3 gallons of Castrol Transmax imports, and both of these two are the only transmission fluids you're going to be able to find from AutoZone or O'Reilly's that meet these specs, but it's going to save you a ton of money. So hope I could help. Give it a shot. What have you got to lose? You know what I mean? $11 bottle of Seafoam TransTune. Try and break up some of that sediment, and then drive it for 20 miles, drain it, fill it, and you may save thousands of dollars in transmission repairs. All right. Thank you, guys, and peace out.